working with this sacred dream consciousness where we begin to realize that this reality is the dream of the world, and like we're the dreamer, we're dreaming into being this reality, both collective unconscious level and a collective conscious level. And so the last few days, I'm sure that you've seen things. I mean, the world's been hard, and I think we're seeing that in real time.
So welcome to the podcast, Wind Horsley. I'm excited to talk to you today. I've seen your content online, and I've seen you around in the IASD hallways. So I'm excited to finally connect on the podcast. I know you do a lot of things. You know, you're a dream worker, you're a sacred dream guide, and you do energy work and a lot of different things in this field. So how did you get started with this journey? Have you always been a dreamer?
I have. Thank you so much for having me on, Amita. I was very much the quintessential childhood dreamer, kind of a daydreamer. When we talk about childhood and things we do to survive our childhood, I very much clicked out into the dream realms and was very much a daydreamer, highly imaginative. So working within those realms was nothing new for me. Growing up, I sort of began a spiritual journey, so to speak. And in that, found things like yoga and meditation and energy work. And those things kind of called to me. When I came back specifically to dreaming, I remember I had a reoccurring dream many, many times since, I want to say, late teens, early 20s. And I started having it again in my 40s and just became very curious this time about, like, really, what does it mean? And two things sort of happened simultaneously. One was I was invited to a dream share group in which they used formatting by Jeremy Taylor. And it was explained to me who Jeremy Taylor was and kind of his foundational work for group work. And I was fascinated, went right out and bought The Wisdom of Your Dreams, and have read it so many times, Amina, that it's literally cleaved in two. It's in two different pieces. The second thing that happened is I am online, as many are these days, and I'm in groups. And I happened to be in a group where people would occasionally post a dream. And they sort of inherently knew that there was some sort of meaning to the dream, but they didn't know how to go about figuring out the meaning, because we're kind of trained to be logic-minded, walking around in this plane of existence. And when you try to decipher dreams from the logical mind, they sort of don't make sense. And people would ask questions, or people would say, well, maybe it means this. And I would kind of think about it. And then I would kind of give things that were coming to me. And almost inevitably, the original poster would hone in on my post and be like, oh, you have me in tears, or that makes so much sense, or something that really kind of encouraged it. So I work with a group called Soul Medicine, and we were doing vision boards. And on my vision board, I found a magazine cutout that said dream really big. And I was putting it on my vision board. And my mentor saw it, and she was like, oh, it's this. And so I told her, just sort of blurted out that I kept seeing these dreams in these groups, and I would try to kind of decipher the meaning, and I seemed to be pretty good at it. And that I recalled back in high school being really good at English and literature and poetry, being able to pull out symbolism and create meaning in that way. And so a little bit later on, somebody was talking about their dream, and she said, oh, I saw Wynn's ears just prick up. And then she said, what do you think about this dream? And so I sort of just started doing what I do. And the person was like, wow. And then she had a dream and she had me interpret her dream. And so just started going on a quest of telling everybody, hey, if you have a dream, let me see what I can do with it. And so working with dreams outside of my own dreams kind of started that way. I wanted it to be a collective effort, though, which is why I don't use myself as a dream interpreter, because that feels to me almost intrusive, like I'm going to tell you what your dream means to you. So when I started out, it sort of ended up being that way, even though I didn't mean it to be that way, just because I had to sort of evolve my own being. And I know that one thing symbolically can have multiple meanings, and those meanings sometimes can overlay on top of each other. So in terms of like the limitations of my own English language, trying to figure out how to say that, I sort of started out saying, well, on one level, it could mean this, and on another level, it could mean that. And I don't like the word levels because it gives us a sense of hierarchy where the bottom's kindergarten and the top is graduation, and our brains are wired to go, we want to be on the graduate level. So I'm thinking, how can I describe this without that kind of sort of level or hierarchical sense? And I am part Native American, and I do work with, as I said, a group named Soul Medicine, and we do sweat lodges every week. And so inside of a sweat lodge, I met a figure named Grandmother Spider. And in terms of dreams and how I wanted to work with them, it came to me like this, that you, the dreamer, are in the center of a web. And then all these threads coming out that form the web are these pathways of exploration. And so I've created something that I call the web of dreams. And this is the way that I work with dreams for myself and for others, is being able to explore all those pathways. And so then it makes it sort of fun because we become like explorers, exploring all these different pathways, and some of them can be connected to the past, and some of them to the present, and some of them deep inner work, and some as they relate, that interrelatedness that webs teach to those directly around you, or even tying into the collective conscious and the collective unconscious. And that was a term that I learned from Jeremy Taylor's book, because we talk about the collective conscious, but we are also connected to the collective unconscious. And I feel like that's kind of where we're actually trying to get at. So in my own development, I know that you, Amina, work with lucid dreams, and I know a whole framework of people work with lucid dreams. But for my own journey, I sort of began in the liminal dream space. For some reason, I honed in on that space, and it was very important to me. And there's a lady, I believe her name is Jennifer Dubé, that wrote a book, and I can't think of the name of the book right now, but she also has
Liminal Dreaming, I think it's called.
Yes, and she's on YouTube and social media, but she kind of was an inspiration in that space, and I worked and played a lot in the liminal dream space, and I feel like it's indicated in lucid dreaming also, that liminal dream space can be a springboard into lucid dreaming. I can spontaneously lucid dream, but I'm not like a master lucid dreamer where I can just make myself become lucid and have mastery or control. But I sort of honed in on that liminal dream space as a springboard to problem solve and to dream seed. And so then here we spin off, because in my native background, I work with a specific tribe, but for some reason I was really drawn to the Toltec tradition when it came to dreaming. And that began with the book, The Four Agreements. In the very beginning of that book, it talks about the smoky mirror and the dream of the world. And for some reason, that terminology really clicked something in my brain. And so in this day and time, people are referring to things as the hologram or simulation or the Matrix, things like this. And in my mind, the dream of the world just like really clicked in. And so I like to reference this reality that we're speaking in right now as the dream of the world. And I began to speak about the dream realms where we sort of travel to as the dreaming. Then I found out later that the dreaming is actually a terminology that was used by the Aboriginals in Australia. And so I can't claim that things that are coming to me are anything new because they're not. The wisdom is out there. It's been out there. It's just I've sort of, I guess, opened myself up through this journey to receive things in and then sort of almost get that external validation afterwards, which we shouldn't need, but it's always nice. And that aspect of it began to blow my mind. That aspect of it sort of went into a philosophical nature where I began to realize that, we are dreaming this reality. People tend to think of dreams only when we fall asleep and we're unconscious and then, our minds go into a dream state. But I began to really realize that our minds are always in a dream state. And this thing that we call creator or God or goddess or, source, universe, universal energy. I was running one day, and running can very much be a moving meditation. First couple of minutes, I joke around, you're running and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And then boom, you're in the zone. You're in this meditative state. And I was running one day and all of a sudden this image came to me about how there was just this vast nothingness. And then after millennia of vast nothingness, all of a sudden there was a being that just became conscious of itself. And I could connect to that because in that liminal dream space, in the hypnopompic space, I have managed to wake up so slowly before that I was just outside of the dream state and just inside of the waking state where I was just aware of myself. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a physical body. There was, no work and vacuuming the floor and all the things. But I was just soft enough to realize that I existed. And that was the connection that I felt like was being made. It was just like some sort of being that just was aware of its own existence. And then as its awareness grew and its curiosity grew, it was like, well, who am I? I can't see myself. What do I look like? Or what would I be like? And from that space, it became creator that began to dream everything into being. And then again, mirrored back to ourselves as the dreamers and how we create from that dream space everything into our lives, into being. And that we have that consciousness about us, that we think we're more conscious than we actually are. And that subconsciousness that sort of always records. It's always recording everything that we see and we hear. And it's taking these experiences and it's setting it into a pattern by which we live our lives, whether we are consciously aware of that pattern or not. And how when we go back and then work with our nighttime dreams and we tap into the dreaming, then we can go into the space of where just like how potent that space is to really discover ourselves in that subconscious pattern and the things that we don't actually remember on a conscious level, but it's recorded everything. And then, you get into this really philosophical mind space of I'm the dream being expressed as the dreamer having a dream. And that just really blew my mind when I began to see the interweaving of the dream of the world, the dream that we express here on this plane of existence, and the playground that the dreaming is, without its limitations of gravity and, being able to fly and leap a tall building in a single bound that we perceive that we can't do here. And then what if we could do it here? We just think that we can't because we haven't observed it outside of ourselves. And therefore we believe we can't do it. And it just forms that core belief that it doesn't exist, that it's not possible. What if it is possible?
Yeah, wow. I really love that. I took some notes and there's so much to think about. Um, First of all, thank you so much for like just taking me through your journey. I really love how, you kind of found a niche in liminal dreaming, and that's kind of something that really stood out to you. There's so many different niches in dream work. I always say this, and lucid dreaming is like my thing, but there's like all these other, things you can use dreaming for. And working with that liminal space is a really good way to start for a lot of people, and it does connect to all the different types of dreams. I also really enjoyed that book, the Jennifer Dumpert book, so I'll link that below for listeners. But that's wonderful. Do you have any? I know you said you're not so much of a lucid dreamer, but I love to ask people anyway, since that's my favorite topic. Do you have any cool lucid dreams that you can share, or any? It doesn't have to be a lucid dream, really. Maybe like a dream that really stood out to you along the journey.
I did have a lucid experience when I was in college, and it was a really trippy experience. And since it was so trippy, it may have maybe caused a little bit of the block from being able to do it more. But I remember I was in my college dorm and I was sleeping, and I woke up and I went to the bathroom and I was looking in the mirror, and then I started to melt into the floor. And at the point I'm melting into the floor, I'm like, hey, I'm not really awake. And so that part of the dream goes on. And then I woke up in my bed and I went to go do something else, and something else happened. And that's when I realized, oh, wait, I'm still not awake. And then it startled me to the point where I fell out of my bed. And then I remember the carpet started moving, and I'm like, I'm still not awake. And at that point, it's almost like the movie Inception, where there's just like all those different layers of dreams that you're in, and you keep thinking you're waking up, but you're just in a different level of the dream. And when I finally woke up, it was like one of those experiences where I'm questioning reality. I don't know if I'm awake or if I'm asleep. And so then that caused a little discord within me, because just the way that dream played out, I was just waking up multiple times. And this happened spontaneously. I was not on any substances or any mind altering anything. That just happened to occur spontaneously. And it's never happened to that degree since then. But like I said, I think I freaked out just a little bit and may have put a little bit of a blockage on myself being able to work that way. But that was the most trippy experience I've had with lucid dreaming. There's other dreams that I'll have where I become a little bit lucid within the dream, and I'll be aware that it's a dream, but not enough to where I feel like I have control over anything, like I could alter the dream or go anywhere I wanted, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, lucidity is such a broad spectrum that it looks so many different ways. And I've kind of experienced something similar too. It's kind of called a false awakening, or a nested false awakening, when you keep like waking up. And a lot of times that can be lucid, and that can be so frustrating and confusing for people, where they're not sure. It creates this like just this realm of like, dreamy reality mix. It's like this weird in between. So that fits right into, the liminal phase category of like being awake, but also being asleep. And it's just really confusing. I used to have these where I would wake up, still in the dream though. I thought I was awake and I wasn't lucid. I thought that I just woke up and I would like get ready for school and then go to school and be on the bus. And then I'd wake back up again in my bed. And then I would do it like 3 times, like get ready for school. And then I'm still in my bed. And it was so frustrating because by the time I actually woke up, I felt like already was like, should have been at school by now.
That's interesting that you mentioned that it was on a loop like that, because that's what's coming to me lately is, the movie Groundhog Day. And it's like at first he doesn't realize he's in that loop. And then he realized that he's reliving the day. And so he's just having fun with it. He's playing, different things. Well, this day I can be super sweet and this day I can be kind of a jerk or whatever, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't matter, because I'm just going to wake up. Nobody's going to remember anything. I'm going to do it all over again. But at the end, of course, he learns the lesson that he's supposed to learn and he exits the loop. And that loop is coming to me a lot lately, with our own patterning within the dream of the world, like how we're creating that looped pattern where we think we're doing something and then we find ourselves right back at the beginning to play it out again until we do figure out what we're supposed to figure out to be able to exit that loop. So that's interesting that you use that as an example.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, that's a good movie example. I definitely think that dreams kind of resemble that, especially with recurring dreams and nightmares. A lot of times there will be a lesson there or like something we need to unlock to kind of, move past it or heal from it or come at least to some terms with it. Even though, dreams have lifelong journeys that sometimes don't resolve themselves in one dream. I think that's like part of the lesson, which I find very cool. Um, so when you help people interpret dreams, I love how you talked about, how you found an approach that's not too direct and, finding the right wording. I think that's really important. So I love that you kind of took some time to, just find the right way to help people with that. So do you do like dream interpretation as like a service or dream coaching, or do you just kind of, help people out for fun?
I do both. So I want it to be a business. However, I'm not going to not help someone. So it sort of ends up being what it is. And one of the first things that did come to me were nightmares. So people don't tend to seek someone out if they're having, really fun, fluffy dreams, or if they don't remember their dreams. And it's when they kind of have an unsettling, creepy, nightmarish type of dream where they're like, whoa, I need to know what this means. And almost inevitably, as we work through those dreams and they see things from a more symbolic level, then it sort of makes more sense. The fear begins to dissipate and they sort of know at that point if it's something connected to the within themselves or connected with their relationships or kind of interrelated. There was something I was going to say and I can't remember.
No, it's all good. It'll come back. It always does. But yeah, I totally relate to you on that. Like, I think everybody should be lucid dreaming and learn for free. And, I wish I could just do everything for free, which, to an extent I can. Like, I am in the community, teaching people, talking to people about it. Like, I just do it because I love doing it. But, finding that balance with business is hard because you want to make it a career. You want to make it something sustainable so you can continue doing it. It's such a weird balance. I get it.
It is. And I am a teacher by nature. I love to break things down and make it make sense. So I do teach classes. I teach classes in Roswell and Canton, sometimes down in Woodstock. Just those are more educational type things. It's your run of the mill, like you're brand new. How do we start working with this? How do we start remembering our dreams? I'll go through, things that can prevent us from remembering dreams, making that connection, showing the dreams they're important by writing them down. And then even then, that's very specific. I love how my chief puts it. He said, if you try to interpret the dream as you write it down, then you'll inevitably take something out or put something in. And what he was talking about was that interjection of the personality of self, or the interjection of ego. So I try to teach, recording the dream exactly as it is. And I kind of took some hints from Jeremy Taylor, using kind of his strategies as a springboard, by giving it a dream title, and then looking at what jumps out at you the most, like what symbol jumps out at you the most, and doing these little tricks first, and then begin to write the dream down, but trying to remember emotions, colors, things like this, but as if you're a reporter, like recording your dream, not trying to interpret it, and then to go back to it with fresh eyes in order to interpret the meanings. So that way you're not twisting something to complete a narrative that's already in your head. So I'll tell you, one of my biggest learning points was it was supposed to be paid dream interpretation. And I didn't end up getting paid for it. And basically the lady didn't just tell me the dream, but she told me all this background information. And essentially what she wanted me to do was agree with the version of the interpretation she'd already come up with to justify some bad decisions that she wanted to make in her life. And so that was a huge learning curve for me, because it taught me to do some educational pieces first. It also taught me that, along with one of my own experiences, taught me what I call the magnetics of dream interpretation. So I was in a dream share circle, and they teach us to say, if it were my dream, this is how I would look at it. And this guy was brand new, so he forgot that part. But he also was just like, this means this. And I was taken aback and immediately was like, this guy doesn't know me and he does not know what he's talking about. Had an attitude. And then I got home, and at first, you get kind of defensive, like the shoulders go up and you're just like, I can't believe he said that. And that's just so not true. And then I would be in any kind of moving meditation, like vacuuming the floor or doing the dishes, and my mind would kind of click into it. And I would still be in the space of, nope, that's not true. And then, a week or two later, it would come back in, no, that's not true. And then a couple of weeks later, well, maybe it's true. And then a couple of weeks later, it's like, okay, he was probably right. It was like this huge pushback. So when you look at magnets, they try to put them a certain way, they repel. And then other times, they attract. You hear a dream interpretation and you have what Jeremy calls that aha moment. And you're like, yes, that's it. And so I like to say that the attraction, that immediate aha moment, you just know what that meaning is, and you know how it fits in and what you need to do to work with it. But that repulsion, because I experienced it on that deep of a level, I can also teach that it's true somewhere in your life, but you're not ready to accept that as truth yet. And over time, maybe that resistance kind of dissipates until you're ready to work with it.
Every dreamer really has their own journey with it. And that's why the wording is so important, because even if the interpretation is correct, or, correct is relative, but even if it's something that, is worth considering, the dreamer may not be ready or receptive to it, if the interpreter comes off too arrogant or too direct, because, we have egos, and sometimes we don't like to hear other perspectives. But when the interpreter helps the dreamer come to that conclusion on their own, just by offering questions or clarifying things and talking to the dreamer about the dream. It's way more powerful a lot of times when they come to the conclusion. And sometimes it can happen way later, like I usually can't interpret my dreams in the moment that they happen either. So that makes total sense. And I was wondering if you could give like a little summary on Jeremy Taylor for those that maybe don't know him or don't know really what he did. Could you kind of give us just a little synopsis about what he did and why was he so important in the field?
Sure. So, from my understanding, Jeremy Taylor was a Unitarian Universalist minister. Dream work was his life's work. He came up with a foundation for dream share groups, and he did groups from prisons to churches to he taught in seminary schools, just out in the community. And in these dream share groups, everyone could offer a perspective, but he really wanted it formatted a certain way so that it did not come across like somebody telling you who you are to you and what your dream is to you. So he would ask that if you're offering an interpretation of someone else's dream or, just a deciphering of the symbol, you would say, if it were my dream, this is how I would look at it. And that allows for different perspectives, which is really neat. It's just like if you had a book club and you all read the same chapter, but you get together to discuss it. And when you get together with others to discuss it, you allow for different perspectives that you would have never thought of because you look at the world through your unique lens, through the experiences that you accumulated in your own life. Then you allow for a perspective of somebody else that has completely different experiences, completely different emotionality and mindsets to offer, and it builds onto something greater. So the dreams were the same way. You would allow for those different perspectives to come in, and it would allow for something bigger, more complete pieces coming together for a more complete puzzle, so to speak.
I love that. Yeah. He definitely was an awesome, guide in the space and set a lot of kind of the tone for the work we do now. So I think that's great. And from my understanding, he was also one of the original IASD founders.
Yes, he
So
was.
that's wonderful. I love that. So one more question I wanted to ask you, which we kind of touched on a little bit, is what are some ways that people can learn to interpret their own dreams? Like if they don't have like a dream guide or an expert and they're kind of totally new to this and have no idea how to start, I always tell people like you have the answers to what your dream means. So what are some tips for like how to look into your own dreams?
Well, I'm going to way back up the truck. I like to start at night, and there's a line of thinking among Tibetan Buddhists. There's a book called The Yoga of Dreams, and it talks about your nighttime practices. So thinking about the nighttime as the beginning of the next day. I have a dream altar. Lots of people have spaces where they have like maybe a little meditation nook or a dream altar or some kind of practices where they'll do a yoga nidra. I think Jennifer talks about that in her book too. Something to set the space. Sometimes people journal so that they can get kind of any disruptive things that have been in their lives up until this point, kind of get it out of themselves and put kind of tucked away or put away. Or some people will use that as a launching pad to hold on to in that liminal space as they cross into dream, so that they can ask the questions of like, how does this get resolved? And then you can go on Google and literally Google hundreds of people that have had inspiration to problems or something that they're trying to invent, or, your periodic table. Elias Howe's my favorite. He was trying to perfect the sewing machine, and he had a dream that he was taken hostage by, cannibals, and he was placed in the pot, and they were stabbing at him with these staffs, and at the top there was a hole, and he woke up and realized to put the eye in the needle of the sewing machine where you could thread the needle. all these different things like that. So you can utilize that space that way. So really set the space. And as part of that space, you want to hold the intention of dream recall. And even in that, there's certain things that we know inhibit being able to dream and to recall dreams. So you want to abstain from those things if you want good dream recall. Also, the way that you wake up is important. If we are sort of waking up by a loud, obnoxious alarm and hit the ground, feet running, then you're less likely to remember a dream because we haven't allowed for that space. So some people, if they have jobs where they need to wake up at a certain time and really start getting up and get going, they'll back their alarm up. And they'll set an alarm for maybe 4 o'clock in the morning to allow themselves to wake up and then fall back asleep. And then they may set their alarm for like 6 if they need to get up at 7 maybe. And that allows a space to dream and then re-wake up and be able to journal and work with the dreams. I like to encourage things on the bedside table. So one thing that Jeremy talked about was he and his wife had the voice recorders. So they didn't have to even touch anything. They could just immediately, didn't have to turn the light on, anything, just immediately start speaking their dream. And that was helpful to them. And I know that we have, voice recordings on our cell phone devices these days. You could also even do talk to text on something like Google Docs or Word. You can have pen and journal. And I like to encourage my artists to have sketch pads and things next to them, because sometimes waking up for your artist and being able to sketch out a prominent dream character, it keeps their focus on that dream. And oftentimes that focus and movement will actually just spark an unwinding right there, being able to even work with something like sculpture. So there's a lot of creative ways. And even with dream journaling, you can get extremely creative with gluing and making it scrapbook, different pictures and various shapes and all that sort of thing. You can track moon phases and Schumann resonance and, star alignments, or you can just have a simple book that you just jot the dream down. It's really up to the dreamer how creative they want to get with it. I do, as I mentioned, encourage recording the dream exactly as the dream happened and going back after that to begin to unwind and decipher meaning. So those are the basic tips that I usually have. And then we can also look at things from different perspectives as well. So you can look at an initial interpretation of the dream, and then you can begin to look at it from almost like a shadow work or ancestral healing point of view. Okay, if I have that mindset and look at these symbols, does anything shift or change? If I look at it from interrelatedness, like almost a mirroring effect, can I see this outside of myself in my friend group or my, among my coworkers at work? Does that shift anything? So just kind of slowly beginning to broaden out the way that you think about dreams, almost like you're in that dream share circle where you're getting different perspectives, but you're allowing the space to shift your own thinking. I had a dream. I was going to do a dream session with someone, and I had a very interesting dream. And I remember sharing that dream with my mentor right before I went into the dream session. And then when I went into the dream session, it happened right before my eyes. And what that dream told me was that it wasn't my job to interpret. And, I sort of knew this all together, which is why my focus really became like, how can I help people without calling it interpretation and trying to do the stout interpretation? But that what my job was asking certain questions or saying certain things made the dreamer make connections for themselves. So I think originally in my mind that I was doing the interpreting, and then I was going to do an integrative counseling with them after to show them how to integrate and this into their own lives. Like, what do they need to do within themselves or within their work environment or their friend group or their relationships to kind of get the lesson and put action into place to resolve whatever needed to be resolved. And at that point, when I had this dream in that session, it really sunk in my mind that the counseling part didn't matter, because once I give the symbology, inevitably I'm watching light bulbs go off, and I don't even have to say anything after that. Like, they know inherently what's happening inside their own lives and inside their own beings. And then once I help it make sense, then they know what to do from there. And that's when I shifted to beginning to work on the front end more collectively, so that the dreamer's own interpretation can be voiced, and then I can guide things in. And that's why I like to speak about myself as a dream guide, is I'm just looking at symbology from that very neutral place, because I'm not in your life. So I don't have any emotional ties, or, from that very neutral place, being able to take this information and then guide it into your awareness. And then the dreamer inevitably kind of knows where everything goes after that. They sort of are able to grab all of this information and then put it into the slots, plug it in, almost like plugging in an outlet, to make the circuit board more complete, if you will. So I love that.
I love that. That's a really great analogy. I really appreciate that. And those are some great tips for dream interpreting and how to write your own dreams down. There's so many different ways to record dreams. And there's really no right or wrong way. It's really a kind of find what works for you kind of thing. So I love that. And where can people find you? Like, if they want to connect with you, I know you're online and all the platforms.
Yes, I have Sacred Dreams on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm located in Canton, Holly Springs area. I do teach classes and do sessions through Eclipse Over Roswell and Holistic Lifestyle Center in Canton. And I'm able to do phone or Zoom sessions. So when you find me, usually my telephone number will be on there, so I can just be contacted that way to set up private sessions.
Wonderful. I
People really kind of waking up to concepts of consciousness now. And I really loved how Jeremy Taylor talked about the collective unconscious, because I feel like that's not talked about, but yet it's there. That's what we're all coming from. We're trying to move from the collective unconscious to the collective conscious. And I love how he talks about, myths and legends and things like this, because you can start to see the collective in those stories. And then from that, also see it in our own dreams. And so having a background in both yoga, qigong, and kind of meditation, I also try to work with sacred dream consciousness. And so some people just find me because they have maybe a creepy dream and they kind of want to know what it's like, or they're having this recurring dream and they can't figure out what's the meaning. So that recurring dream kind of talks about that Groundhog Day loop we were talking about earlier. But also we're getting into people with very sensitive issues. So they're having nightmares because they have trauma. So I'm moving into beginning to work with those sorts of people. I am adjusting my own education level to be able to work in those areas. So I'm brand new at that. I'll put full disclaimer there. But I am moving into that direction, but also just working with the sacred dream consciousness, where we begin to realize that this reality is the dream of the world, and like we're the dreamer, and we're dreaming into being this reality, both collective unconscious level and a collective conscious level. And so the last few days, I'm sure that you've seen things. I mean, the world's been hard, And I think we're seeing
Yeah.
that in real time. We're seeing, the
Mhm.
collective unconscious wounds that have not been healed. And we're seeing the collective conscious attempting to shift that. And so we have this dance between kind of this light and dark, this yin and yang happening. And so those are the types of more philosophical and powerful things that I also like to try to work with. And some people really like it, and some people are just not here for it yet. So, but that's something I also would like to do more of and teach more of, being able to use your dreams for inner transformation, being able to see these reality shifts, and that we can sort of ride along the shifts, or we can become a master of the shifts. And it's very difficult. I can't say I'm a master at all. However, I do well sometimes and I don't do well in sometimes. But being able just to see it from that dreaming point of view, it kind of allows a space of, okay, I'll put it this way. When we have a dream that's a nighttime dream and we wake up, we are more willing to look at all of the different pathways of exploration because we're detached from it, meaning it's not real reality, is our mindset towards that. But when we're in this reality, we are emotionally attached to it and mentally attached to it, the outcomes of certain things, because we believe that this is the real reality. When if we can look at it all as a dream, we don't shift the way that we experience things. We're human beings, so we're going to have our thoughts and feelings about it. And we don't want to become so detached that we're unfeeling and unempathetic, but we want to be able to see it as a dream enough to not be sucked in by it so totally that we're really in that wounded, hurt spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, dreams really can provide healing when approached, like, with intention and with patience. So that's very well said, and I appreciate the perspective. It's been such a good episode today. Really a lot to think about. And I really appreciate just all of your love and your wisdom and all the amazing tips you've brought onto the show today. So thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to say something really quickly. I believe it was on Facebook, but it could have been on a different forum. I was just having one of those blah days because we are human beings and we have blah days. And I ran across a video of you. I think that's how I even found you. And you were like, hey, if you're a dreamer and you're out there doing dream work, I just want to give you kudos. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you were pumped up and really, giving it out there. And I felt it with every fiber of my being. And I was like, oh, I love that. I needed that today. And so I just wanted to say, appreciate you for any type of videos that you make like that, because you never know who you're going to reach. And that day you happen to reach me. So I appreciate you. I mean it.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. I actually know exactly which video you're talking about. And a few of my dream worker friends said the same thing. Like, I really needed that. And I needed it too. That's why I made the video. So I'm really glad that you connected with it because, yeah, we need to keep doing what we're doing. It's important work. And it's sometimes hard, to find that balance between dream and life and, survival. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing because it really is amazing in all dimensions.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.